I got to understand this question, and it's not in our show notes, so I'm going to ask it now, Abe, if that's okay. You keep
Go
talking
for it.
about people displaying their thoughtsies. How do you fix that?
If you don't have a good reason to cash your thoughtsies, don't. Straight up. If you don't have a 2-drop into 3-drop into 4-drop win the game, don't cash your thoughtsies. Multiple times when I first started streaming Black Red, people were like, I can't win the blue-white matchup. I'm like, that matchup's literally the buy. You just thoughtsies them, you get to see what they're doing the entire game, and you just play around it. Unless they have exactly Wandering Emperor into Fairy, which is hard to do, they get to play the flash game, right? But it doesn't matter. And they're like, oh, like, how do I fix it? What's the easiest way? I'm like, when are you casting your thoughtsies? And they're like, oh, there's always casted on 1. I'm like, why? They're like, what do you mean, why? I'm like, what are we doing with the thoughtsies on 1? You know they get to draw 3 cards before they can hit absorb mana, right? On the draw. They get 3 unknowns. And you're expecting them to just always draw bricks. What happens the times you don't? You just play into their counter spells. Whereas if you thoughtsies on 2, and they don't have counterspell, you can jam Fable and win the game. Or like, instead of making an attack, or like playing your double spell on turn 6, Thoughtseize, and be like, oh, I lose to exactly Verdict. Maybe if they have March, they eat my Den that I'm going to animate instead of playing into Verdict. I'm going to hold this Thoughtseize that I've had since turn 3 because I didn't have a good reason to cast it, and figure that out. Most matchups, against the aggro matchups, you don't want Thoughtseize. In the mirror game 1, sometimes you want to hold your Thoughtseizes because like you said, Liliana is very impactful. Shoulder's very impactful. Cletus, Fable, very impactful. I believed in the Grixis Death Shadow mirrors, sometimes you want to leave in your Thoughtseizes, because if they ever hit an expressive iteration, you're just like, oh my gosh, 1 mana to trade for the best card in the format? Let's do that. So there are times where like you just want to hold your Thoughtseize for the turn right before they can cast the impactful spell, and it just completely like wrecks their entire game plan. And you get to see if they have removal. You get to see the other threats they have. It's like, oh, should I Fatal Push this Bone Crusher Giant? It's like, oh, they have a Kalitas in their hand. I can beat this Bone Crusher Giant. I'll just block it in a couple of turns. I have to kill this Kalitas or else I lose the game. So like holding your Thoughtseizes until you have a reason to cast them is very important, and something that gets you a lot of like small edges. It's all about small edges. And if you can turn those small edges into like big drastic edges against your opponent, you'll just win more. And if your opponents aren't doing that, you can exploit that. It's like, if you're the blue-white player and your opponent always Thoughtseizes you on 1, it's like, I drew the counterspell on turn 3. They're going to jam into it. The game is over. I have Wandering Emperor. And then you get people being like, oh my god, blue-white's the best deck. I don't know how to beat it with red-black. Just think about what you're doing.